I'm Dustin Hardwick, a physical therapist with a PhD in movement science. In this second episode of the Movement PhD, we are going to break down the gait cycle, one of the most fundamental patterns of human movement. We will review the spatial and temporal descriptors of gait, and then walk through the phases of the gait cycle. By the end of the episode, you will have the vocabulary and framework needed as we dive deeper into gait in future episodes. On YouTube, you will see slides appearing in sync with the audio. If you're listening on another platform, the visual aids and full transcript are available on my Substack. Whether you prefer listening, watching, or reading, offering all three formats supports better retention and a deeper understanding of the material. Check the episode description for the links. Let's go through some definitions before we start talking about descriptors of gait. When I say the word gait, it just refers to the pattern of movement of the limbs during locomotion. So what is the manner of running? What is the manner of walking? Walking and running just being the two most common forms of human gait. Although they are very similar as far as their biomechanics, there are also some differences that make these two very unique. Walking, this is the most common form of locomotion, and in walking, at least one foot is always in contact with the ground. Therefore, during the full gait cycle, there are two distinct double support phases where both feet are in contact with the ground at the same time. Running, on the other hand, is a form of locomotion which is characterized by a flight phase. So during this flight phase, no limb is in contact with the ground. So your feet are all in the air. So there is a flight phase in running. In this next section, we're going to cover the spatial and temporal descriptors of gait. We'll cover step length, stride length, and step width and foot angle as our spatial or in space descriptors of gait. And we'll cover step time, stride time, and cadence in our temporal descriptors of gait. Temporal just means in the frame of time, so the time descriptors of gait. And finally, we'll cover gait velocity, which is a spatio-temporal descriptor of gait. So it combines space and time to describe gait. The first characteristics we'll talk about is step length. Step length is the distance measured in centimeters between the heel contact of one foot and the heel contact of the opposite foot. So in this example, it's the distance between right heel contact and left heel contact. A normal step length is 66 to 72 centimeters. Here we have a video showing step length. And you can see it is the distance measured by this red line from the right heel contact to the left heel contact. The next spatial descriptor of gait we're going to talk about is stride length. So stride length is larger than step length because now we're talking about the heel contact of one foot to the heel contact of that same foot. So in this stride, we have two steps. Again, this is going to be measured in centimeters, and the normative values, or what is a normal stride length, is approximately 132 to 144 centimeters. So it should be approximately double your step length. We have a video for this as well. Stride length, you can see, is right heel contact to the next right heel contact. Let's watch that one more time. Right heel contact to right heel contact once again. The next spatial descriptor we'll discuss is step width. So step width is the distance in the lateral distance between the heel center of two consecutive foot contacts. So a step is a consecutive heel contact from right to left. The distance laterally between the center of those two heels during contact is going to be step width. A normal step width here is 8 to 10 centimeters. This descriptor of gait can be really important when working with patients with balance difficulties because typically with those that have balance issues, the step width will increase. So you'll see this value go from 8 to 10 centimeters to 20 centimeters. So this is one that we'll look at often when we're doing a gait analysis, particularly for those with balance issues. Our final spatial descriptor of gait is foot angle. So foot angle is the angle in degrees between the midline of your foot and the progression of walking. So if I'm walking forward in the forward direction, this graph to the right shows this, my line of progression is straight forward. The angle that my foot makes, the midline of my foot to that line of progression, is the foot angle, or another way to say that is toe out angle. So again, it's a midline of your foot measured against the line of progression of walking. That angle should be approximately 5 to 7 degrees. Now that we have covered the spatial descriptors of gait, again, spatial being space, let's move on to our temporal descriptors of gait. So these are in time, the time descriptors of gait. So the first temporal descriptor of gait is step time. Step time is the time for completion of a right or a left step. So a right step being right heel contact to left heel contact, and a left step being left heel contact to right heel contact. This is going to be reported in seconds, and a normal step time is approximately a half a second, 0.5 seconds. Here's a video showing step time. So you can see the time it takes from one heel contact to the next heel contact. So left heel contact to right heel contact. Let's watch that one more time because it's a pretty quick video. Again, starting left heel contact, stopping right heel contact, approximately 0.6 seconds. So that is a normal step time. The next temporal descriptor of gait is stride time. So stride time is the time it takes for a full gait cycle. So again, that's from right heel contact to the next subsequent right heel contact. Again, this is going to be reported in seconds, and the normative value here is double step time. So we're talking 1 to 1.2 seconds, being a relatively normal value for stride time. Obviously, both step and stride time can change if you speed up or slow down your walking. So these are the normative values for a comfortable walking speed for an adult. Now we have a video representing stride time. So right heel contact to the next right heel contact, representing a full stride. Let's watch that one more time since it's a relatively fast video. So right heel contact, and it stops on the next right heel contact. Stride time here is approximately 1 second. So again, the stride time would be within normal limits for an average walking speed. Finally, we'll go through cadence and gait velocity. Cadence is a temporal descriptor of gait, and it measures the number of steps per unit of time. So we're going to use number of steps within 1 minute. For walking, our average is 100 to 130 steps per minute. With running, that increases to 150 to 180 steps per minute, with more elite runners being close to or above this 180 steps per minute. We'll describe running in further detail in subsequent videos. Gait velocity or gait speed, the difference here being velocity has a direction, speed does not have a direction. This is the distance covered in a given amount of time. So it combines both that spatial or space and temporal or time measurements. You calculate this by dividing the distance covered by the time it took to cover that distance. So our unit here is meters per seconds because it's the distance, meters, covered by the time it took, which is in seconds. This is the most functional measure of an individual's walking ability. Therefore, there exist many cutoff values for fall risks, for ambulation independence. We'll cover the abnormal gait and some fall risk variables later on, but right now just recognize that a normal gait velocity is 1.1 to 1.5 meters per second. And if you have a gait velocity or gait speed below about 0.8 meters per second, that means you're at an increased risk for fall. So again, these are normal values of a comfortable walking speed. We are going to switch gears here. We have gone through the spatial and temporal descriptors of gait. Now let's talk about the events of the gait cycle. When I say a gait cycle, this is the largest unit used to describe gait. It begins with the foot contact of one foot and ends when the same foot contacts the ground again. For our examples, we're going to go from right heel contact to the next right heel contact. We can break down this gait cycle into a stance phase and a swing phase. So first off, stance phase. The stance phase represents 60% of the gait cycle, and it represents the time that our reference foot, for our example is the right foot, is on the ground. So your right foot stays on the ground for 60% of that gait cycle. So it's from right heel contact to right toe off. That 60% represents the stance phase on the right. Swing phase represents the time when our reference foot, in our example, the right foot, is in the air. So it's from right toe off to the next right heel contact. So 100% of the gait cycle is made up of 60% stance phase and 40% swing phase. That is a little bit different in running. We'll again cover that in a later episode. Here we have a video that depicts the stance phase and the swing phase on the right foot. So stance phase, time that the right foot is on the ground, swing phase when it's in the air. Let's watch that one more time. Stance phase, foot is on the ground, swing phase, in the air. Finally, let's talk about double limb support. This exists only in walking. This does not exist in running. This is the time, and there are two of them, two time periods, where both limbs are on the ground, when both the right foot is on the ground and when the left foot is on the ground. It represents the 0 to 10% of the gait cycle, so the first 10% of the gait cycle, and then the last half, 50 to 60% of the gait cycle. So between that 50% and 60% of the gait cycle, both limbs are also on the ground. This double limb support is really important because this is the time by which we transfer our body weight from one foot to another. So from the 0 to 10% part of the gait cycle, weight is being transferred from the left foot over to the right foot. And then again, at the 50 to 60% double limb support time, now we're transferring the weight from the right foot onto the left foot, which then allows our right foot to swing through. This 10% in each of these periods, as we walk faster and faster, that 10% decreases until it reaches 0, when we will automatically transition to running or jogging, which has that flight phase instead of that double limb support phase. Next, we're going to talk about gait cycle events. So this is probably going to be the most difficult part of this presentation. So feel free to run this through a few times until you have all of these events and periods memorized for the gait cycle. Knowing where mid-stance, loading response, terminal stance occur in the gait cycle will be really important when we talk about when muscles aren't doing their jobs in certain parts of the gait cycle. You can visualize where that's occurring and be able to put it into context of the gait cycle. First, we will watch a video representing the periods of the gait cycle. I will then go through each of them in turn, so don't worry. You don't have to get it all from this video, but this video is just to put it all together first for some context. So to set this up a little bit, the reference limb is the left leg, which is going to be the one closest to us. We'll start with initial contact, loading response, mid stance, terminal stance, pre-swing, then initial swing, mid swing, and terminal swing. So let's watch that one more time, paying attention to the limb closest to us. Initial contact, loading response, mid stance, terminal stance, pre-swing, initial swing, mid swing, terminal swing, and then the gait cycle starts again. We will now go through each of these periods of the gait cycle in turn. The gait cycle starts with initial contact. So for our example, it's the right heel contact at the 0% of the gait cycle. This initial contact positions the limb for loading. The loading response immediately follows that initial contact, and it ends when the forefoot of that right foot is on the ground. So it's that 0 to 10% of the gait cycle. The role of loading response is to load that right limb and for shock absorption. The next period of the gait cycle is mid-stance. It begins when the contralateral foot is lifted, so in this example, when the left foot comes off the ground, and it ends when the body weight is aligned over the right foot. So ipsilateral just means on the same side. Our side is the right foot, so it ends when the body weight is aligned over the right foot. Mid-stance is there to progress the body to that limb. The next period of the gait cycle, terminal stance. It begins with ipsilateral heel rise, So again, ipsilateral being same side, which for our example is the right foot. So it begins with right heel rise, and it ends when the contralateral, or opposite foot, in our example left foot, strikes the ground. The goal of terminal stance is progression beyond the supporting foot, because your body weight moves from above your right foot to beyond your right foot. This is helping to generate propulsion. The last period of the stance phase is pre-swing. Don't let the swing part throw you off. It's pre-swing, so we're still in stance phase. It begins with initial contact of the contralateral limb. So in our example, it's when there's initial contact of the left foot. And it ends with ipsilateral, in our example, right toe off. The goal of pre-swing is for propulsion and to prepare, which makes sense, it's pre-swing, so we're preparing for swing. Another major goal is transfer of weight to the opposite limb, because this pre-swing is in this second double limb support. So remember that 50 to 60% double limb support, we're transferring weight from our right foot to our left foot. Now we'll go through the periods of the gait cycle within the swing phase. The first period is initial swing. This begins with the swing foot, in our example, the right foot, lifts from the floor. And it ends when the right foot is aligned with the stance foot. So as soon as that right foot gets in line with that left foot, initial swing ends. The goal of initial swing is foot clearance and limb advancement. That's the goal of most of swing phase, is foot clearance and limb advancement. Next, we have mid-swing. This begins as the swinging foot is aligned with the stance foot. So in our example, as soon as that right foot is in line with that left foot, and it ends when the tibia is vertical to the ground. So it starts in some flexion, and once that tibia is vertical to the ground or perpendicular to the ground, that's when mid-swing ends. So to review, it starts when the limbs are aligned and the knees in some flexion, and it ends when that tibia is vertical, so it's going to be in less flexion at that point. Again, the goal here is foot clearance and limb advancement. Our final period of the gait cycle and final period of the swing phase is terminal swing. It begins when that tibia is vertical to the ground on that right foot and ends when that right foot contacts the ground, which then completes our gait cycle. The goal of terminal swing is deceleration, because I need to slow down that swinging right foot to prepare for the next step. It's also to place the limb for the next period of the gait cycle, which would be starting the whole gait cycle over again. So again, goals are deceleration and limb placement in preparation for initial contact to start the gait cycle once again. Let's now go back and revisit the video depicting the periods of the gait cycle. Now that we've gone through each of them in turn, it should be more familiar as you watch a full gait cycle. Again, the foot closest to the camera is the reference limb. It's actually the left foot in this example. You can see initial contact loading response, mid stance, terminal stance, pre-swing, initial swing, mid swing, and finally terminal swing. Let's watch that one more time, again referencing the limb closest to us. Initial contact loading response, mid stance, terminal stance, pre-swing, initial swing, mid swing, and finally terminal swing as we prepare for the next step. So unfortunately, there's two ways to depict the gait cycle. There's two ways to go through the events or periods of the gait cycle. The traditional terminology, which at this point is a little older, and then the Rancho's Los Amigos terminology, which is what most rehab professionals will use right now. But it's good to be able to talk back and forth between the two, because you might be talking to someone who was trained under the traditional, and you might have to make that translation between them. So within the stance phase, heel strike in the traditional is analogous to our initial contact. Foot flat is analogous to our loading response. Mid stance is the same for both. Heel off is the same as our terminal stance in the Ranchos, and toe off is analogous to our pre-swing. So fortunately, while they are different, the goals of each of them kind of match up, so it should make sense for you as you look at both of these different terminology methods. Swing phase, initial swing is called acceleration in the traditional terminology. Mid-swing stays the same between the two, and deceleration is the same as our terminal swing. Thank you for joining me for this breakdown of the gait cycle. Understanding both the descriptors and phases of the gait cycle will be important as we continue our discussion of gait in future episodes. If you found this helpful, please subscribe to the podcast and follow me on social media. If you have any questions or specific topics you would like to discuss, let me know in the comments. In our next episode, we will discuss muscle physiology from muscle structure down to the sarcomere and discuss topics like metabolic properties and the length-tension relationship. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.